Hoops through life. Hoops through life.
Welcome to another episode of Hoops Through Life, a podcast where we discuss everything related to women's basketball player development, the collegiate recruiting process, and transition from high school to college. I'm your host, Elsbeth Bierman. Our guest today is Coach Bobbi Morgan. Coach Morgan brings a wealth of experience, beginning her coaching career as an assistant at Widener University, then quickly moved into the head coaching role at Academy of Notre Dame. She has experience as a head coach at Haverford High School, Cabrini College, and Haverford College, where she remains the winningest coach in program history, notching 3 Centennial Conference Championships, 4 NCAA Division III Tournament appearances, 2 NCAA Regional Finals, and is a 3-time Centennial Coach of the Year. Currently, she is the head coach at Ursinus College. Beyond the collegiate level, Coach Morgan has worked with USA Basketball as both a court coach and assistant coach for national junior women's teams. In 2023, she helped guide the U16 national team to a gold medal at the FIBA Americas Championship. She has also been named an assistant coach for the 2024 U17 national team, which will compete for a FIBA World Championship. Needless to say, I can't wait to get into today's conversation. Coach Morgan, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So when you're watching a recruit play in an AAU tournament or a high school game, what are some small details that tell you whether they can compete at the next level?
I don't know that they're small details, really. I mean, obviously you look for ability. I mean, and that can vary depending on your level. But for me, I think there's a intangible in terms of how much fun they're having, and that doesn't mean they're smiling. It just means they're playing. You can tell if somebody loves to play, and you can tell if a player is competing at a high level, no matter what the situation. So I love to go to small tournaments when they're not during the live period, which we are allowed to do in Division III, and kind of see who they are when they don't know that someone's watching, because that can really tell you everything.
Yeah, and you also mentioned ability too. Maybe what are a couple key ability things that you look for as you're watching a tournament or an athlete play, either for the first time or you continue to watch them?
Sure. I mean, I think you can break it down into offensive and defensive skills. And obviously, everybody wants kids that can score, that can shoot, that can get to the rim. So that's sort of a given, right? You have to be able to score. But I also love to find really good defenders. The kids that are up in people's grill, or if they're a post defender, always fighting to get in the front, just playing so darn hard that you know that that's going to transfer to the college level. And if it's a point guard, can they create for others? Are they distributing the ball? Are they making their team better? Those are things that obviously we all value no matter what level.
Yeah, so defensively, I know a lot of times first year athletes in college really struggle defensively, whether it's they're fouling all the time or they just can't stay in front. Is there anything that you could recommend? And this is like really putting you on the spot for like a very specific drill or activity or something. So if you don't have one, that's okay. But is there anything you can recommend a high school athlete to do maybe during practice to really try to prepare for the college level of defense?
I don't think a lot of high school players or AAU, they teach closing out very well. And so when we get players, I mean, we do spend a lot of time on that. And it obviously depends on what do you play. Do you play black line? Do you force sideline? But being able to close out, contest, but not get blown by. So, I mean, that would require obviously just a lot of speed and agility drills, lateral movement, but the closeout, which is, full speed to chop and stop. I don't think a lot of athletes can do that very well.
Yeah, that's a good point too, because if you think about what a defensive possession consists of, if you were to break it down statistically, I would argue that probably, I don't know, 50 or maybe more percent, and this is just me speaking out loud, is potentially in a closeout type of situation, right? So I think that's a really excellent point, just to really focus on the closeout part. So I might say to an athlete too, anytime you're in practice, just be intentional about your closeouts if your coach isn't teaching that.
Yeah, and the other thing, we just did individual meetings with our team, and we encourage them to play one-on-one. with two or three dribbles and just really, and from different places on the court, right? So not from the top where you always play, but, pass it out to them on the wing and then play from there so that you're really forcing yourself to, if you're trying to keep it on one side of the court or not give up middle drive, whatever your principles are, to really try to focus and stick to them. And I think that's something that any high school player can do pretty easily, right? If they're training, they don't need a 5-on-5 play to get better on defense.
No, and that's like an easy thing to do once you get into the gym. Instead, like that's the warm up, right? Instead of just, everybody isolating themselves to a different basket
Shooting
and just
layups.
kind of shooting layups or something. Just get a teammate, get like the fastest person on your team, and be like, I want to guard you. And then
Yeah,
that
yeah.
5 minutes a day, that'll really, I don't know, like over weeks, that'll really show on the court for sure. All right, so a lot of players, the questions I get a lot are like, "Oh, what stats do I need? What stats are college coaches looking for?" And they think that it's like stats, highlight tapes, those are the things that will help get them recruited. What are coaches actually looking for when either evaluating a highlight film or evaluating a full game film?
Yeah, it's a great question. I've actually spent the last 2 weeks watching game film for the USA U16 national team trials, so the best players in the country. And I'm on a committee where we're evaluating just players solely on film. Now, these are the top players in the country, but I don't think it matters whether it's that level or Division I, II, and III. I mean, the first thing you're looking for, obviously, is athleticism. Are they good enough athletically to compete at your level? And then you're also obviously looking for like their skill set. And in highlight films, you only get offense. I mean, you very rarely get a film of someone playing defense. And I yearn for someone to please send me a highlight film that has you making a mistake and responding to that mistake. So whether it's a turnover that you make and running down and making a stop or doing something at the other end, or, having it, make creating a turnover and missing a shot, like seeing you handle good and bad, but you don't get that. But I think what we do look for are just the basics, but I do not evaluate solely on film. I don't think I'm good enough at it. And I think you can be misled because the film can be very creative. So that's a starting point. And I think also the level of competition is important too, because if you're just dominating in a game, but there's nobody that can play you, like you're playing against middle schoolers, that's can be very deceiving.
Yeah. So when you say that film can be deceiving, are you talking about specifically like a highlight film?
Yes, yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. Full game obviously does give you that opportunity to see them in every situation, but I very few of us have time or even the staffing, at least at our level, to go through game film. I love to see maybe even a quarter or a highlight film, and that's a starting point to then continue to see that player live.
Mhm. What's your favorite way to assess a player's ability?
I mean, to see them in person, of course, right? And as much as I have opinions about AAU, that is usually where you see players during the summer and spring AAU season. And I don't know that that's actually the best place. I think sometimes with high school, you're playing in a situation where there's a little bit more preparation. And if you're a good player, teams are scouting you and taking away the things that you're good at, where in AAU, everything works, right? Everything works.
Yeah. Yeah. So would you say, so your opinion on, we don't have to get into like your opinion on AU, but you're saying there's definitely value in assessing high school as well, and it's not just about AAU. Would you say that that is your experience maybe across the board? I know you have friends at all different levels, or would you say for like at the D3 level, that's kind of what you prioritize?
No, yeah, unfortunately, we can't prioritize it because we don't have the time during our season. But if a player is local and we're able to do it, or if it's over winter break that we can see that, I do like to see that. But the majority of our evaluations are done in the spring and summer during AAU. You can see more players in one place. It's just that's the way it is.
So what advice maybe do you have for players who aren't getting interest from college programs yet?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest mistake people think is that they're going to be discovered, right? And so I just play on an AAU team, so I'm going to play and get a scholarship. I think you have to be proactive no matter what level you are, and be intentional about reaching out to the schools that you think are a good fit. And I also think you need to be honest, right? So you need to have people in your circle that are giving you sound advice as this is the level that you can play. And then once you know that or you feel comfortable, then be proactive. Reach out to those coaches and schools, not the day before a tournament. That's not as helpful as you think, but as early as you can, like right now, this is a great time to send your AAU schedule, your summer camps, and let people know that you're interested in your school. If for our level, like a 26, 27s, that's who we're going to be looking at, and they should be proactive.
Yeah, I would say that's the majority of the conversations that I have with parents is it goes kind of like this. Okay, we would like to play in college. Great. How many schools have you reached out to? And it's usually, oh, none. I play AAU, like exactly like you said. I play AAU. We do these tournaments. Have you ever seen coaches on the sidelines of your games? No. Okay, it's not just gonna happen, right?
Right,
Like,
right.
and you can attest to this too. If you got a an email from an athlete, maybe you'd never seen them before, and they said, we're going to be at this tournament, and you were going to be at that tournament as well. Would you at least try to go by and see them for a second? Like, what would you do in that situation?
Absolutely. We obviously have a list of players that we're already have seen and that we're recruiting, but I call it seek and find season, right? So you never know, you really never know who the players are that are going to end up on your roster. And oftentimes the players that you spend recruiting a lot may end up going elsewhere, and you end up with somebody you discover late in the AAU season. So definitely reach out. Someone on our staff will see you. Sometimes, as you know, with AAU, there's an age level and they're all playing at the same time, and there's 35 courts. So you may not be able to see them a lot, but you're definitely going to try to make an effort to see them and then follow up if you get a glimpse and you think this is someone that could help your program.
So this actually question might already have been answered, but maybe if you have a different answer, what's a common mistake that players or their parents make in the recruiting process that could be easily avoided?
Well, I mean, obviously the proactive part is the first one, but I think the other thing, particularly at the Division III level, right? It is pay to play. And you pay to play AAU, and if you go Division III or even Division II, in some cases, they're not full scholarships, you're going to be paying. And I think understanding before you get too far down the road with any school, coach, program, is knowing what your finances are and what you can afford. And you have to put that first. I have three children who all played Division III sports, and that was a priority for our family. We had that. I had the benefit of knowing the process, but you have to know that, because the worst thing that can happen is you can get into a school, you get admitted, it's where you want to go, and that financial aid package is out of reach, and that's heartbreaking for the family and the student.
Yeah, in that, as you're taking like a student athlete through that process, what maybe are some of the things that a coach can do, a college coach can do to get the parents to start looking in that direction? Would it be like setting up a meeting through financial aid? Like what that could that look like?
Yeah, I mean, so we have some pretty strict rules about what we as coaches can do, but as a parent, I try to talk to the parent as I would talk to my friends, like this is something you need to do right away. So when the family visits us, I talk to them that you need to really look at this. You can reach out to our financial aid office, and I encourage them to make an appointment if they have questions or send an email. But yeah, do I address it on the first meeting with every family, because I know how important it is. And I've seen where my friends and their children have gone down that road and made that mistake. So,
In my experience too, where somebody commits before they get the financial aid package, they get the financial aid package and they realize they just can't do it, and then they kind of decommit.
yeah. And I've actually seen that at some of the high academic schools. I worked at Haverford and schools like that where a player will commit, but they have to remember they're committing to the application process. And you'll see that, you'll see a student tweet, I'm committing to the application process at Harvard or ED, because they may not get in. They're not always guaranteed. And that can be even worse.
Yeah, yeah, you never want to see that because it's, they work so hard in so many ways, and then for that just to happen is disappointing to say the least. Um, so you've recruited and developed all different types of players, conference players, All-Americans, high academic athletes, like you just mentioned. What are some skills, maybe like top one or two skills that you look for in a player that translates well to the college level, the college game?
Yeah, I think I referred to it already. I mean, the first thing that there's two kinds of athletes that I've been able to recruit successfully. One are really good shooters. There is just a place for them at every level. I love three-point shooters. Some of our championship teams at Haverford, we had three or four kids that could just really knock it down. So I think I've always tried to build my team around shooters, and then at the Division III level, great athletes, right? They may not have the same skill set as some of the higher level players, but they can rebound, they can defend, and they have the physicality. So I think those things translate to every level. And obviously, if you have a combination of both, you're probably not playing Division III. But for me, those are the things that I really look for. And, I think obviously there are things that we can develop. I do think the biggest lost art in college, and I watch it at every level, is passing and being able to make the right pass to the right at the right time in the right way. We talk about it all the time that a pass to you may be different than a pass to a different player, and I don't think a lot of kids are good at that anymore.
And do you think that's due to like where do you think that's coming from?
I guess maybe, a lot of players now work with trainers, and I have a friend who calls them yeah, cone pounders. You do a lot of cone drills, and you're playing against a cone, but then when you get against defense and you have to make the play, they're just not practicing that skill. They're practicing individual moves and shooting and ball handling. So, and I don't know if that's the reason or not. I don't know that there probably are some really good trainers that do work on passing, but maybe that could be part of it.
And then another thing I've heard from different coaches too is just like unstructured play. So not a ton of unstructured play, which can also lead to just like, I don't know, lack of creativity and things like that. That's a whole another conversation. But yeah, that's interesting. Passing and yeah. Now you got me thinking. So I'm just gonna we can just move on from this. But yeah, super interesting. If let's say a player is juggling like multiple offers, they have multiple options on the table, what do you think, what would you advise them to focus on when deciding what school might be the right fit for them?
Yeah, I think this is the same at every level, but maybe not anymore, right? Because it's Division I level, there's a lot of money involved. At least, the women that I coached this summer, they're looking at six, seven figures for NIL deals. But we had this conversation in July with those women about like, I just hope that you can find a place where you're going to be happy. So I think that's the question you need to really ask yourself. If you're looking at multiple offers, you have to like the coach, but never pick a school for the coach because they come and they go. Is this a place where you're going to get a great education, where you can see yourself blending in with the student population? Is it a place where you'd be happy and get the both the academic, social, and athletic experience that you want? And it's not easy. 17-year-olds have not had to make great big decisions before, so this is the first one. So I think, just thinking about all those things, and oftentimes, if they're lucky, all of the schools fit those criteria. And then it may come down to this coach I connect with or these players I connect with. Um, I do think it's important, and I tell my friends this, like, look at the rosters and look at the turnover, because in Division III in particular, there are rosters that flip regularly, and even now with Division I with the portal, obviously. But is there a culture where people want to stay and where people graduate and they have seniors that graduate and play all 4 years? Those things are important.
It just makes me think of like an athlete going on a visit to the school, right? And interacting with the current student athletes. What are some of the questions that they might be able to ask current student athletes on the team that might be able to help them assess those points that you just mentioned?
Well, I mean, I always try to have them spend a lot of time without the coaches, right? I want to say, just ask anything you want, and I think you should. I mean, is there a good culture around the team? Are the coaches supportive? Are they caring? I mean, these people really do become your family for 4 years, and you want to play in a program where people care about you. And then, for me, and this is just my philosophy, perhaps it's different, but I want it to be fun. I really, and we talk about that all the time. We circle up before practice, a lot of teams do that. And each day somebody else will talk. And we talk about, let's have fun today. Let's compete. But I think it's important for athletes to ask those questions, because if you find out that everybody's miserable, well, it's probably not a place you want to go. You don't want to join the misery train.
Yeah, and I think it's really good to point out, like, those are the things that are telling, because sometimes I get the impression when I talk to certain like high school athletes is they're just so excited to be invited onto a visit, where now they're just like wide-eyed and they're enjoying the campus, and they don't always necessarily know what they should be looking for, what could be a red flag for them, right? Red flag for me might be different than a red flag for you, and green flag vice versa. And so I think that's a really important thing to remember, is like, what's important to you and what questions can you ask to assess that, and then just believe the things that you see and what the athletes are telling you.
Yeah, and I think that, and I tell the women on my team to be as honest as possible. Share with them your enthusiasm for the school and the program, but don't be afraid to say these things aren't all perfect, because no school is perfect. And they may not like the food on Wednesday night, or whatever it is, or the library lights may not be bright enough, whatever it is they want to pick. But I think it's important to do that. And I think that's why, at least when we do a visit, we don't put a show on. We have them go to class, we have them go eat and just spend a day as a normal student, because that's what their life is going to be. And if you try to make it bells and whistles and a show and change it, they're not going to have a day like that again. So I think it's important for them and for all families to do that. And I encourage people to come back. I mean, if you're not sure, it's like buying a house. Come back, look at the school in different seasons, look at what it's like in the spring, and if you're not sure.
Do you have a question or a favorite question or a couple of questions that you ask athletes and their parents when they come on a visit?
Yeah, I do. And I think it's very telling sometimes. I ask them, how important is basketball to you? And you would be surprised how many times I'll get an answer where it concerns me. And I mean, obviously, we have a lot of kids visit, but basketball needs to be important, because if you're going to give up and sacrifice the amount of time that is demanded of you, you have to absolutely love it, and you have to be passionate about it. So I ask that. But I also ask them, I kind of try to probe into their why. What's your why for playing? I mean, what is it about the game that you love? And when you get an answer where they talk about just sharing the experience with their teammates and going through it, and you can kind of get it. A kid is going to be a good fit for your program if they get it.
hmm What's what's a, if you want to share, like a completely shocking answer that you've gotten to how important is basketball to you?
Sometimes it'll be, well, it's important, but my high school coach is a jerk, or they'll start talking negatively about their experience. So that's usually where it raises some red flags. Or they'll say, well, I love it, but it's not something that, defines me, which is why I want to play Division III. And then I have to follow up and say that, Division III time commitment might be slightly different, but not dramatically. From October to March, you are training and you are lifting. So, I really think people need to understand that.
Division III is not easy to play. It is a huge time commitment, like you said, and in some ways you have to be, I don't know, I think in some ways you might have to be a little bit more self-disciplined because of the lack of access your coaches have to you. So if you want to be really good, which you can be, you have to take on some of that. It's not just a coach telling you where to be, when to be. What are some things that you can recommend to high school athletes that maybe aren't getting heavily recruited, aren't top prospects, other than reaching out to the emails, or maybe what type of an email can get on a coach's radar? If they're not being heavily recruited, maybe they're a little bit late to the game, late in the sense of they're going into their senior year of high school and nothing has really happened, but they haven't been super proactive. How can they kind of like accelerate this process?
Yeah, that can be difficult. I do think there's some value in some individual showcases that occur throughout the recruiting process outside of AAU. Particularly at the Division III level and high academic schools. So there's some events that like the Hoop Group will run and Hoop Mountain up in New England. The City of Basketball Love in Philadelphia, they run some individual showcases, which, if let's say you haven't done a whole lot, but there might be one in the fall that may get you on some coach's radar. I mean, again, you still need to reach out prior to that event to make sure people look for you and understand who you are. But other than that, I mean, it's still really about reaching out. And if you're not on radar, I mean, you can also ask your coaches to reach out. I get calls all the time from high school and AAU coaches about players. And particularly if it's somebody I know, that can be very impactful, I think. So it doesn't just have to be the family. As to what kind of an email you want to personalize it, I get emails all the time to Coach Smith or Coach Jones, and they obviously are copy and pasting, which is fine, but make sure you get the name right. Not that I don't rule them out. In fact, we're all human, right? We all make mistakes. So, but I usually mention it to them, like, hey, just be careful, and because I don't want that player to do the same thing to someone else who may write them off just because of that. I've raised three kids. I know they make mistakes, so not worried about that. But I think in that email, showing that you actually are genuinely interested in whatever school it is, right? So don't just say, and obviously like Ursinus is a college, so they'll say, I'm interested in your university. Well, we're not a university. We're a college. We're a liberal arts college in suburban Philly. So I think that little bit of attention to detail is important. And honestly, you shouldn't be reaching out to schools that you don't know anything about because you may not want to go there. So do your research ahead of time.
What I always hated was when a high school coach or an AAU coach would reach out and say, hey, look at some of my players. And I'd say, I'm interested in this one. And then it's like, oh, well, they're not interested. It's like, well, then
Yeah.
why did you have me watch their film, right?
Right. No, and you get that. I get like, here's 18 kids to look at. And I usually respond, if any of them are interested in us, please have them reach out to me because it is a waste of our time. And I think again, I do think high school coaches can sometimes be better because they will know exactly a little bit more about the academic goals many times. And I think when they reach out, it's, about one player that can be very effective.
All right, when let's talk about the transition to college a little bit. So that high school to college, it can be hard academically, athletically. What are some proactive strategies that an athlete can do, let's say the summer before their first year to prepare for college life on the court and off?
So, I mean, I don't think a lot of players are ready for the college game, Division I, two, or three level, period. And unless you're one of the top athletes, I just think that you have to know that you need to be in the best shape of your life, which many times players coming into college aren't because they haven't played AAU that spring and they go to senior week and they have fun. So I think getting in the best physical condition you can be in terms of cardio and lifting, and then playing as much as you can and working on your skill set. And, we are obviously, hopefully coaches will provide them with a little bit of guidance as to things to work on, depending on who they are. Obviously the 3-point line is much further. So if you're a shooter, you need to know that because it's an eye opener. So I think just obviously continuing to do what you've done to get you to this point is important. And then from the preparation for being away from home and all of that, I don't know that I have an answer for that. That's something you sort of have to go through. Obviously with guardrails, right? That's what your coaches and your teammates and all the support that you'll have at your institution. But yeah, I mean, those first 6 weeks, I say it all the time. It's gonna be a little rocky for most kids. It really is. They're gonna be homesick. They're not going to have that network of friends that, when you're high school, you're the top of the world and you start over. But, they'll hopefully in 4 years later, they feel the same way about their college, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I did an episode with some former players, and I asked them that question of like how can somebody prepare, and they said you can't.
No, no,
Like
no, no.
yeah, go ahead.
No, no, I mean, I think it's one of those things in life that no one can explain to you what it's like to be away from home for the first time. No one can explain to you what it's like to have a baby. Sometimes you just got to do it and kind of go through it. And it's not easy, but like any experience, that's where the growth comes, right? So you you have to go be homesick and then understand that you can do stuff on your own and that you can figure out and navigate things. These are the transformative years, the most transformative years, right? And I think that's why those of us that have coached for a long time love it because you get these kids, they come in and they're 17 and 18 and then they leave as women. They leave as adults who really often have it together, pretty much. I mean, not completely, but a lot more than they did when they started anyway. That's always the goal.
Yeah.
So, and that's the rewarding part.
Yeah, and then so then at the end of that conversation, what we came up with was just you have to be open to the process. Like that's
Oh
how you
yeah.
prepare, is just being open and willing to be uncomfortable and just kind of moving through that. Um, but yeah, that's yeah, funny.
There's yeah, there's no manual.
No.
No, but you know what there is though, and I think this is the cool part about being a college athlete, right? You have from the moment you walk on campus, you have this built-in support network that, other students don't necessarily have. They may have it in their orientation group or whatever, but when you're on a team, you got a team. Hopefully if the culture's good, they're nurturing and they're really willing to help you and take you in. And that to me is a huge benefit of playing a college sport.
Yeah, I always said if I didn't play sports in college, I'd probably have no friends.
I don't know about that, but
But that's
but
how it can feel, right? Like you get on campus and immediately your team like takes you away and you're like,
oh
"Oh,
yeah.
okay, like I'm safe now," right? Like I
Yeah.
have built-in people who are looking out for me.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah.
That's funny.
But in my first year I was the only freshman, so it was like
Oh, under the microscope.
yeah, I was like the only one. So, anyways, all right. So I have a last couple questions that I asked all the guests. What book or podcast would you recommend every incoming first year read or listen to before their first season begins, and why?
Yeah, there's the podcasts I listen to are usually for coaches. And I love Chris Oliver, the basketball podcast. Most of them would not be necessarily relevant for players, but there are some that are. And he delves into, the psychology and some of the things that can be helpful. But, I don't really know that I listen to a podcast that 17-year-olds would. But I do know my favorite book for any age, I think of is Legacy. And and I think why I like that is it really shifts the focus from me to we. And I do think as kids prepare to get to college, everything they've done is to get to this point, right? My AAU team, my high school performance, my stats, my highlight. And obviously they might be good teammates in high school, but like when you come to college, it's really the culture of the team and having that understanding because you may not play as a freshman, so you have to really be bought into the team concept. And I think legacy, leave it better than you found it, and sweep the shed, and all the messages in that book are really powerful, and I think they're great for high school and college athletes to read.
Yeah, I love it. And there, a couple of other coaches have also mentioned that book. So if you're listening, go ahead and pick it up for your, I'm sure the library has it and just give it a read. All right. So if you could snap your fingers and change one thing about the recruiting process, what would it be?
That's a great question. I mean, this is going to sound simplistic, but I wish it would be easier. for families. And I wish, and this is kind of a strong word, but I do think at times, especially, it can be a little dehumanizing. And I know kids that feel that way because you know, we all, no matter what level, you recruit more players than you have spots. It's just what we have to do in order to fill our rosters. And I feel it. You know, sometimes a kid really wants to come to your school and you're full. And so if I could change anything, I don't know. I don't know that I can change that because there's only so many spots. Um, I do, and this is basketball specific. I do feel that the AAU, I think a lot, it's kind of extortion, right? These parents are paying thousands of dollars for their kids to pay. Then they have to pay to get in. The coaches have to pay thousands of dollars to get the books. And I think that that's really rough, you know, for the parents and difficult. And that's really our sport and volleyball, perhaps. A lot of other sports don't have to pay, but I don't know that I can come up with a magic wand to make it better. I do think people need to educate themselves, and like these podcasts are great because learning about the process a little bit before you're actually in it can be very helpful.
Hmm. Yeah, that's the biggest thing I've seen is just the gap of knowledge that like as a college coach, you're getting people who reaching out to you who kind of know a little bit about the process because they're reaching out to you, but there's probably hundreds and hundreds of other kids who don't even know that that's an option, right? And you're
Yeah.
never hearing from them because why would you hear from them? Yeah, I remember when I spoke with she was it was like around this time, but her senior year. So it's March of her senior year. So she's done playing and said, I want to get a scholarship. And I said, I said, what are we, what
Yeah.
options do we have right now? Like here, maybe are some options, but then they said something that was alarming to me is they said, well, I didn't think we could reach out to coaches. And so just to know, and I'm not sure not all parents or families are like that, but like there are some out there who are like, oh, I didn't even
Yeah.
know that that was something that we could do. They thought it was against the rules. They thought like their high school or AAU coach had to do it. So,
Wow. Yeah, that's sad.
yeah,
Um, but you know, I think obviously it's a little bit of a different era now. I think with, you know, social media, everybody is on it and kids are much more in tune, I think, now about the process. But I do think they need to understand that for most athletes, even at the Division I level, like you can still reach out. And if you're a Division I player and you want to go to, you know, St. Joe's or Villanova or whatever the school is, you know, make sure they know that. Now they may see that you're not a fit for their program and it lets you know that, but if you don't ask, you're not going to get an answer. So
yeah. If you ask and you don't hear anything back, well, that's an answer in and of itself too.
yeah, it can be. I mean, I do think sometimes give it a chance, follow up again, because you know if and normally coaches, I know I try to be really upfront with people as best I can. You know, if we're not looking for that position or we just filled it. The other thing though, if you know you want to go to a school and you've gotten your financial aid package, make that commitment because particularly at our level, somebody else might before you, right? And you know, there's only so many spots that you have. Now, you know, obviously if it's your top pick, you're going to give them as much time as you want, but you can't kick the can down the road too long. If you know and it's your top pick, say yes. You know, that the two best things you can say to a college coach are yes and no. Because once we get that yes, we're great. And if you're not interested, that's awesome too. You know, it's not personal. This is, you know, understanding that this is about you and not the colleges. It's about you finding the right fit, and that's the most important thing.
For sure. I think that's the perfect way to end it. Coach Morgan, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you so much for listening. If you aren't already, I would highly recommend subscribing to the podcast so you can get updated once new episodes are dropped. If you're a fan of the show, go ahead and leave a review. It really helps spread the word to more athletes, parents, and coaches. Now, if you have any questions for myself or future guests, feedback, or you're curious on how we can work together to help you reach your basketball goals, let's have a conversation. Feel free to email me at l@hoopsthroughlife.com today to set that up. That's el@hoopsthroughh life.com. Thank you, and I look forward to hearing from you soon.